Well, this evening we reach part 7 in that 9-part series, and the subject is holiness. If we wanted to sum up the key message of the whole series, it might be something along these lines. If you want to lead well, wherever you have any kind of influence over another human being, whatever context that is in, whether it's one human being or lots of human beings, if you want to lead well, then you should model yourself on the one who has gathered more followers than anyone else in history. And his name is Jesus Christ. If we want one key message from this evening, what is it that Jesus would tell us about leadership as we look at our readings this evening? Well, then I would suggest it's this, because it's this phrase that is found in both the readings that Miles read out to us from the scriptures this evening. And it's this: be holy, because I am holy. Is that what you would have expected from a talk on leadership? You want to be a good leader? Be holy. Me neither. I didn't expect that. I wouldn't have expected that. It's not the sort of message that you imagine you're going to hear if you want to find out what is it that makes a good leader. Someone that is holy is what the Bible's saying this evening. It's a bit different, isn't it? Well, let's have a little look at what some of those thoughts might suggest to us. If we look first of all at the reading from Peter, he says, prepare your minds. Do you notice that? Prepare your minds. What we're dealing with here is a shift in perspective, a shift in mindset. Our thinking's got to change. That's where it's got to start. Be self-controlled, set your hope fully on the grace to be given when Jesus Christ is revealed. Now that's interesting. Not when Jesus Christ appears, though that language is found in the scriptures. This is when Jesus Christ is revealed. What does that mean? It means he's here now, in this place. It means he's here in Jersey. It means he's on the streets of St. Helier now. It's just we don't necessarily see it. And a day will come, a day is coming with absolute certainty when Jesus himself is revealed, and we will all see where he is and what he is doing. And everybody in this island will see where he is and what he is doing. And I think we're going to be surprised. That's kind of encouraging, and it's kind of scary, isn't it? So, don't conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. Do you remember we said right at the beginning, prepare your minds. So something's got to change up here. And here we see where the change has got to come. We can't just go on living on impulse or buying flowers on impulse. Some of you might remember. We can't just react with animal instinct. We share certain things in our makeup with the animal kingdom. God has made us out of the same stuff that he has made the rest of creation. And that's a good thing. But we are more than that. And we are not just to work on animal instinct. We are to prepare our minds. And where is this taking us? It says, just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. Be holy because I am holy. That's what God says. You want to follow me? You want to be with me so that when all is revealed and people see where I am and what I am doing, you will be found to be with me, on my team, on my side. You want that? Then you need to be holy, because I am holy. What does it mean? Well, we get a starter in verse 17. You call on a Father who judges each man's work impartially. Therefore, live your lives as strangers here in reverent fear. There's two things in that verse I want to draw your attention to. The first is this: God judges what every single person in this room and outside this room does. And God judges it impartially. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or whether you're poor, whether you've had a great education or no education. It doesn't matter what country you come from, what language you speak, what age you are. God judges what we do fairly. Hold on to that. We're coming back to that. But there's something about holiness in there. It's about doing the right thing by an objective standard, not by, well, I'm better than them. My mum likes me, so I must be all right. My mum doesn't like me, so I can't be all right. Now, neither of those work. God judges impartially. But the second thing I want to draw your attention to in that verse is this: live your lives as strangers here. So I don't know what you think of when you hear the word holy, and whether it's a positive sounding word. If I'm honest, it's not positive for me. It sounds terrible. It sounds dull. It sounds boring as anything. It sounds like, suck the joy out of me and I will be holy. Does it feel like that to you? Is that what that sounds like to you, the word holy? I don't believe that's what it means, but that's how it feels. So I want to suggest to you that if there's only one message you take away from this evening about what it means to be holy, it means to be different. It means to do it differently. How do we roll? Differently. Just do it differently. Holy essentially means set apart, set aside. I don't know how many people are like this when you've got a meal and there's something on your plate that you really, really like. And you save that bit till the very end. And then you have children and they eat that bit before you get a chance. And so you learn to eat that bit first. It doesn't matter. The point is, you know what's the special bit and you're going to put it on one side because you're going to keep it special. You're going to a special occasion and you buy something. Maybe it's a new outfit. Maybe it's something simple like a tie. But you're going to save that because that is special and I'm going to use that on this special occasion. I want something special for that special occasion. It's something simple, something fairly everyday, but we make it not everyday by saving it up, by putting it aside. Way back in the book of Genesis, at the beginning of the Bible, in chapter 12, God calls Abraham out. He pulls him away, takes him to one side, you might say, of the people that he grew up with and the place that he grew up with and the culture that he grew up with. And he said, okay, I'm just going to put you on one side. I'm going to do something a little bit different with you. What is that for? It's to bless you. You're going to be well happy. Why? Because I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to be blessed. And the way that this is going to work is I'm going to bless you and by blessing you and through you, I'm going to bless the whole world. That's what being holy is about. It's about being put aside so that God can do something special with you, so that you can share the love and the joy and the peace and the hope and the everything else that you've received with the rest of the world, with the rest of your family, with the people in your department at work, with the people that you bump into in the street, with the person that's serving you on the checkout. That's what it's about. And if we really do that, people are going to go, there's something different about that person. Did you see that program about the guy? I can't remember which shop he works in. It's a big chain. It's like a Waitrose or a B&Q or something like that. Yeah, other retail outlets are available. But he has decided that sitting on the checkout, he's just going to be really friendly to everybody he serves. And now, people will actually go to his checkout in order to be served by him, even though the queue is 10 times longer than anybody else's. They would rather wait and have the experience of being served by this guy than wait in one of the other queues and get the ordinary experience. Do you see that? He's being different. And he ends up being set aside. Kind of the other way round. Weird. But it's different. And if we as individuals or as a community behave differently, behave like God, then people are going to say, you're not from round these parts, are you? In whatever accent that was. Just to show I'm not from around these parts. We are to live our lives as strangers. If we are to be holy, we will not be like everybody else around us. We will not react like everybody else does, at least not all the time. We will stand out as different. And we shouldn't resent that. We shouldn't worry about that. We shouldn't check ourselves and hold back on that. We should embrace the fact that we are strangers and live out as strangers. Even when it came to redemption, paying the hostage money, it says in verse 18, the hostage money was not gold and silver. Do you see that? It was the precious blood of Christ. God himself, we talked about this last week, God himself is a sacrificial lamb. That's not what I think of as leadership and being in charge and exercising authority. That's because God is holy. He is different. And we are privileged to have a revelation. It says there in verse 20. We have already got a glimpse of how God is different. So let's go with it and be different with him. Do you see that? And so on. Now, I do want you to notice that in verse 22, being holy does involve purification. It does involve truth. It involves love. See that? As you go down into chapter 2, it involves not being malicious. It involves not being deceitful. It involves integrity rather than hypocrisy. It involves not being envious or slanderous. It involves embracing purity. It does involve those things, which are perhaps closer to what we think of as being holy. But holiness is about being different like Jesus. And he is the greatest leader that we've ever had in history. I'm going to show you a couple of video clips that I came across this week. This is people just being different. That is different. And why is it different? It was his attitude. The smile. I'm down here with you. I'm just trying to help and do what needs to be done to put things right. One guy being the nice guy, the other guy being the hard guy that says, in the words of Leviticus chapter 19, rebuke your neighbor frankly so that you will not share in his guilt. Sometimes we do have to put things right. We have to challenge people for things that are wrong. And here is a guy doing it differently. So it doesn't matter whether we're actually giving out something positive or we're having to do something difficult. A different way of thinking, a God way of thinking, a holy way of thinking will transform the community as well as us, as well as ourselves as individuals. It's been an extraordinary week, and I just want to highlight a few more things before we close. On Monday, Paul took us back to basics. He said, whatever else is going on, this is what we're about as a church. We're about making disciples. That means people who follow Jesus, who do what Jesus does. Right? And what does that mean? He says that means loving the Lord your God and loving your neighbor as yourself. Are you seeing a theme here? This was before we started preparing for this evening. On Tuesday, we listened to Peter Fitch, who spoke here last Sunday evening, and he was talking about Jesus healing people who were sick. And he was quoting from Matthew chapter 12. And notice what's going on here. It says that the religious people were looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, and so they tried to trick him. And they said, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? And he said to them, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. And as a result, the religious people, the people who had the truth, the people that were supposed to know what holiness was about, do you know what they did? It's shocking, because he did good to somebody, but on the wrong day, according to them. They plotted how they might kill him. We read that so often. We don't let it impact us. They actually wanted to kill him for being good to somebody, because it was that different from what they anticipated. And it goes on to talk about how crowds of people followed him because he was so different. And whenever he healed them, he told them, don't go telling everybody about me. Seems a bit odd. But he says, I'm doing things differently. And Matthew quotes Isaiah chapter 42, which says this, here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. This is God speaking. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. Justice. Do you remember that word? Putting things right. He will put things right across the world. And how will he do it? He won't shout. He won't cry out. He won't raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed, something really, really fragile, just like a blade of grass that's been bruised. He won't crush it. A smouldering wick. That's had it, hasn't it? That's a write-off. But it says he will not snuff that smouldering wick out. In faithfulness, he will bring forth justice. He will put things right. He won't falter. He won't be discouraged until he has established justice. And then it went on. I was listening to a sermon by Tim Keller, and he was talking about justice. And he was talking from Isaiah chapter 58. These are some of the things that it says in Isaiah chapter 58. It says, my people, day after day, seek me out. Again, God speaking. They seem eager to know my ways. They ask me for just decisions. They seem eager for God to come near to them. We've fasted. We've humbled ourselves. And yet God is not pleased with them being religious, because he says, this isn't what it's all about. Isn't this the kind of fasting I've chosen, God says, to loose the chains of, guess what? Injustice. untie the cords of the yoke, set the oppressed free, to break every yoke, to share your food with the hungry, provide the poor wanderer with shelter, when you see the naked to clothe him, and not turn away for your own flesh and blood. And so it goes on. So when you go back to Leviticus chapter 19, and God says, be holy because I am holy, come to one side, step away from all that stuff that's going on around you. We're going to do it differently because I'm different. And what does it look like? It means that you respect your father and mother instead of bad-mouthing them and being rude. It means you don't turn away to idols or make gods of cast metal. It means when you make a sacrifice, you sacrifice a lamb, right? How long is that meat going to last you and your family? But he says it's got to be eaten within 2 days. What does that mean? You've got to give it away. You've got to share it with people outside your immediate family. And when you reap a harvest, don't go all the way to the edge. Don't go back over the fields. Leave what's around the edges. Leave what's in the field to share with people who have nothing. In Ephesians chapter 4, it says if you've been robbing, stop robbing. It says that in Leviticus chapter 19. If you want to be different, you want to be like me, then you don't steal. Okay? But it doesn't stop there. It says not just don't steal, but if you've been stealing, go out and get a job. Do some work with your hands. Earn some money. Why? To feed yourself? Of course. But that's not what it says. It says earn some money so that you will have something to share with other people. That's what's being different. I don't go to work just to feed my family. I go to work to have something to share. I work at the talents that God's given me, so I've got something to share. I give up some of my time so that I've got something to share. That's what's being different according to Leviticus and according to Peter and according to God, who says, be holy. On Friday, I went to a lunch that was hosted by somebody who wanted to give away a lunch to 20 Christians in the island from different walks, from different churches and so on. He wanted to give it away. He said the reason he was doing it is because he wanted to pass on the baton of generosity. And he challenged the people who were at that lunch, how are you going to pass on the baton of generosity? How are you going to be generous to other people so that they want to be generous to other people? How are we going to be holy as a church? He came up with an idea in his company. He's got a big company with lots of shops. He came up with something called pennies. He actually went to the credit card company who makes the software that they use in his shops. And he had them set it up so that when you go in and you buy something in one of his shops, if it's not a round pound, okay, so if it's something 24p, you have the choice as a customer to take the 76 pence change or to round it up, and the 76 pence change will go to a charity. Every time somebody makes a purchase in his shop, he gives them an opportunity to be generous to a charity. They've raised £400,000 in the last year that way. £400,000. When he demonstrates to his employees that this is how he operates, he says, I want you to be generous. So I'm going to give you the chance every time you get your paycheck, I'm going to give you the opportunity, if you want to actually give a proportion of your paycheck away to a charity. You choose the charity, I'm just making it easy for you. In fact, I don't want to be lumbered with that. I'm going to give it to the payroll company that we use. And he lent on them until they did it. He gives his employees, every single employee, the opportunity to give a proportion of their income away before they even receive their paycheck. People said that's not going to work. The average for that kind of thing in companies is 8% of the staff. In his company, they are now at 40% of their staff choose to give away before they even receive their pay. This is doing things differently. It is no surprise that this is a man who reads this book and is inspired by the example of the holy God who calls us to be holy also. Somebody said, how do we get involved? Somebody else said, you look where God is working. That's that revelation, isn't it? When Jesus is revealed, you see Jesus working, you get in there and you say, I want to be part of that. And you work there with your time, with your talents, with your money, with your attitude, with whatever else it is. That is how we be holy, because he is holy. And that is how the world will be turned around. I then got an email with this article in it. A guy was sitting on a bus in Birmingham, and somebody was arguing with him about how much they hate religion and how much they hate religious people and blah, 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 blah. And he says this: for a long time I've thought that being a Christian consists mainly in arguing with non-believers. I've been learning lately from horrible experience that actually arguing with heathens seldom results in them dragging you to a puddle and begging you to baptize them. So what is the best way to handle these pesky pagans? He says, we are supposed to love people so lavishly that folks suppose us to be of divine parentage. Only then does it make any sense to try and convince them that we actually are. That is what being holy is about. Romans chapter 1 talks for a lot of Christians about holiness and righteousness and what's right and what's wrong with the world. When the scriptures were read out by the rabbis to people who didn't speak ordinary Hebrew, the rabbis would kind of do a spontaneous, simultaneous translation. But it wasn't an exact translation. It was a paraphrase, and it was a bit of a commentary along the way. Somebody sent me this week this kind of targum, is the word for it, on Romans chapter 1, and it includes these words. It's a guy called Brian Walsh. It says, doesn't the very nature of creation bear witness to a God of abundance rooted in justice? Doesn't the goodness of creation bear witness to the generosity of this God? Doesn't the very place of humanity in the order of things teach us that we are called to image the Creator through loving and careful stewardship? So here's the sad truth, my friends. This empire around us, this empire of greed, this narrative of economic growth, well, this whole house of cards is based on lies and deception. This whole culture of consumption, this whole empire of money is based on self-willed ignorance. Creation proclaims a better way because creation bears witness to a God of grace. But we have suppressed this truth, engaged in denial and cover-up, refusing to live a life of gratitude, refusing to live a life of thanks to the God who called forth such a rich creation, refusing to honor this Creator God, embracing a culture of entitlement and ingratitude. We abandon the God of light and we embrace the dark. And in all of our complex theories, in all our sophisticated and incomprehensible economic talk, we became futile in our thinking. We ended up with lots of talk, but no sense. Theories that are empty, vanity of vanities. We thought that we were so wise. We thought that we had it all figured out, but the joke has been on us, and now it is clear that we have been fools. You see, that's what happens when you get into bed with idols. That's what happens when you don't image God in faithful justice, but embrace graven images, cheap imitations that look so good, so powerful, but will always fail you, will always come up short because they are impotent. That's what happens when you get into bed with idols. And so in Leviticus chapter 19, when God says, be holy because I am holy, he says, do not turn to idols or make gods of cast metal for yourselves. Why not? Because I'm a killjoy and I want you to be miserable. No. It's because we do things differently. It's because that is a pack of cards and it's collapsing. Let's do things differently because this is how we roll in the kingdom of God.